I caught the thief at 2:13 on a Wednesday, the kind of night the city smells like hot metal and old rain. He was younger than the profile suggested, lean under a gray hoodie, moving like he'd rehearsed every step through the jewelry district. I took him at the corner of 9th and Mercer, palms to brick, breath fogging the glass of a closed pawn shop. The satchel on his shoulder was heavy enough to argue with gravity. Inside, a velvet roll of 23 stones and a watch that had spent 30 years in a family safe. He didn't fight. He didn't plead. He said one sentence that hollowed out my ribs. "I'm framed, officer," he told me, eyes steady. "And the man who did it taught your father how to do his job." That would have been a weird bluff from any kid. From this one, it was a needle under the fingernail. Because around here, my father isn't just someone's old man. It's Captain Daniel Vega, 28 years on the job, funeral with bagpipes, a street named after him, and a smile on a bronze plaque that follows you whether you want it to or not. If you're watching this, hit subscribe and tell me where you're listening from. I'm Detective Lena Vega, robbery, burglary. This is the night I put cuffs on a thief and he put a mirror in my hands. I Mirandized him between the siren's low wail and the dashcam's red light. He nodded like he already knew the script. "I want a lawyer," he said then, "but you need to see something first." He didn't look past me. He looked at my nameplate like it was a punchline. "Vega, right?" "Thought so." Back at the scene, the storefront was a glittery crime scene waiting for tape. Tempered glass spiderwebbed from a diamond punch core, no alarm because someone had killed the panel, no prints on the frame. The locks showed no torque. We'd been chasing a crew for 3 months. Clean entries, empty safes, a taste for vintage watches and heirloom rings. We'd call them the Elders, because they hit old-line businesses with regularity and respect, like they had a grudge against tradition but not chaos. I bagged the velvet roll, logged the time on my body cam, and took the kid, booking name, Miles Archer, because of course, into the cruiser. He stared out at the wet streetlights, then fished something from his hoodie with fingers that were either brave or stupid. I went for my taser. He froze. "It's not a weapon. Promise." He moved slow, 2 fingers, like defusing himself. He set a plastic-wrapped photo on the divider shelf between us. Older print, glossy, yellowed at the edges, like it had lived in a drawer. 2 men stood outside a diner I knew by heart. One was a younger version of my father in plain clothes, mustache that could stop traffic, tie too wide, the posture of a man trying not to show he cared. The other was a smiling stranger I'd arrested twice as a patrol cop and then watched slither out both times, Victor Lupo. We used to call him the pawnbroker because he never touched the goods, money touched him. There was a handwritten date on the bottom, 1999. The year I learned call signs on my father's lap. The year Lupo went legit and opened a pawn shop 6 blocks from our precinct. "Where did you get that?" I asked. "From the guy who framed me," he said. "Who learned from the guy standing next to your dad. You know that's a big accusation. You know it's a big photo." I brought him in through the Sally Port. Booking fluorescents flatten everyone into a kind of honesty. You can't posture under bulbs that cruel. He signed for his property, $42 cash, a key with a plastic tab reading, Klein, a burner phone with the battery taped. Then he shut down, lawyer, lawyer, lawyer. I dropped the satchel and the velvet roll on the evidence counter. Chain of custody signatures like miles on a car. Desk Sergeant Ruiz raised an eyebrow at me. Another Elders hit. Same signature, different runner. I kept my voice even. "He says he's framed." "Everybody's framed until the DA says otherwise." Ruiz slid a property ledger toward me, then lifted the photo with 2 fingers. He squinted. "Your old man ever eat at Manny's?" "Every Sunday," I said, because lying about that is like lying about daylight. "You want me to log this?" I should have said yes. I didn't. Not yet. In interview 2, I watched him through glass while the public defender machine spun up. He sat with his hands folded, breathing like a student waiting for an exam he'd studied for. His cheeks twitched. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. I didn't answer. It buzzed again. Internal Affairs. Lieutenant Chen. I answered. "Detective Vega." "Lena, come upstairs." Chen's voice was clean and spare, like a file folder you can't open. No. I've got a fresh collar. Bring the photo you're holding. The elevator ride to IA is always longer than physics allows. The walls smell like toner and policy. Chen had the caseboard behind her, names of the elders circled in blue, a lazy constellation we were failing to connect. She didn't waste time. Who gave you that picture? The suspect, I said. What's his play? Says he's framed. Says the framer learned from Lupo, who learned from my father. Saying it was worse than hearing it. Chen didn't flinch. She tapped her nail on the photo. You know what happens if this is real. I know what happens if we pretend it isn't. She slid a thin file across the desk. My father's IA jacket. Most cops never see their parents' folder. Most daughters don't ask. He had 3 complaints, Chen said. All closed. 2 nonsense, one about inappropriate association with a business owner that never got traction. The business owner was Lupo. A laugh caught wrong in my throat. Why are you telling me this now? Because your case just reached back 26 years and put its hand on our shoulder. Chen eyed the glass. And because we've got something else. She pulled up a still from traffic cam, a gray Honda at 158 2 blocks from the break-in. Driver obscured. Passenger turning his face just enough to catch a jawline. Miles. Driver, someone with a scar like a comma near the left ear. I'd seen that scar in a courtroom 3 summers ago attached to a man who flipped on a burglary crew and walked with probation. Name, Klein. The name on Miles's key. You see the chain? Chen asked. Yeah, I said, but what I really saw was Manny's diner on a Sunday, my father stirring sugar into coffee, telling me people were like locks. You learn the mechanism and you turn them. It had sounded like wisdom. Tonight it sounded like something else. Get him to talk, Chen said. We're going to need more than a photo. And Vega, log that picture before it logs you. Back in interview 2, public defender hadn't arrived yet. I stepped in with a recorder in plain sight. You asked for a lawyer. I can't question you. But you said you wanted me to see something. I saw the photo. If you've got more, now's the time to decide whether you want to drown alone. He leaned forward, forearms on the table. Your father taught rookies to look at hands, right? Everyone does. Hands tell lies. Look at mine. He turned them over. No fresh cuts. No glass grazes. The entry was clean, sure, but even clean entries bleed somewhere. I didn't touch the glass, he said, reading my face. Because I wasn't at the window. I was the distraction. You have me on camera 2 blocks over. I led the uniform past the alley at exactly 1:56. The hit happened 1:58. Check your dispatch logs. They wanted me on camera. They. Klein. Lupo's ghost crew. The elders you've been chasing? They're not a crew. They're a training program. They frame kids like me to vacuum the case files, tie off the pattern, make it look solved. And the person teaching them how to make it clean is the same guy who taught your father how to make things look clean for the city. You're saying my father was dirty. I'm saying he was a locksmith, he said softly. Sometimes you open doors for the right people. Sometimes the wrong people learn where you keep the spare key. He slid one more item across the table, a motel keycard sleeve with a room number and a note, Manny's, Sunday, 2 p.m. 2 initials under it, DV and VL. Where did you get this? My mouth was dry. From the man who told me to keep my head down and say I was framed, Miles said. He said if I said that to you, you'd know exactly where to look next. Who told you that? The door opened before he could answer. A woman in a suit put a hand on the table like a gavel. I'm Ava Morse, public defender. My client isn't saying another word. Miles looked at me, something like apology crossing his face. Sunday, he mouthed, and I wasn't sure if he meant the past or the future. I stepped out into the corridor, the photo burning a square into my pocket like a hot coin, Iowa waiting upstairs, the caseboard waiting downstairs, and a diner I'd avoided for a decade lighting up in my memory with neon. That was the moment my phone buzzed again. Unknown number. I answered. Detective Vega, a voice said. Old Smoke, Velvet Scrape. If you're planning on revisiting Manny's this Sunday, bring cash. And bring courage. Who is this? You already know, the voice said. We were both trained by the same man. Internal affairs didn't keep me. They didn't have to. Chen's version of mercy was a checklist. Log the photo, pull the dispatch timestamps, sit on my hands until the PD arrived. I did the first two because doing nothing makes me itch. In records, I pulled 145 to 220. The 152 call about suspicious male loitering came from a prepaid that pinged a tower 2 blocks east. The voice transcription flagged as male, mid-30s, calm. Caller waited on the line just long enough to keep a unit tethered. We diverted car 3A at 154. At 156, a second call, possible break at 9th and Mercer, then dead air. The window punch hits at 158. Our unit is chasing a ghost 2 streets away, exactly as Miles had said. Someone laid down flares and we drove right between them. Back in booking, the public defender had Miles. I couldn't question him, but I could work the edges. Evidence had the satchel open under angled light. Soria, our lab tech, already had tweezers in her hand and a look that said she was 2 steps ahead. Velvet rolls clean, she said, not looking up. No obvious shed from the display case lining. Little glass dust on the outside of the satchel, but not embedded. Like somebody held it near the break after the punch, not through it. Gloves. Nitrile. Powderless. We've got a full handprint inside the satchel where someone didn't wait for sweat to evaporate. No ridge detail. But the glove brand leaves a faint polymer residue. It's a high-end make, Kiteflex. We've only seen it twice. On who? She lifted a brow. Case 19-447, the Bunton watch job. And Case 20-011, the Skyline Diamond sweep. Both elder hits. Clean entries. No arrests. I felt something slide into place that I didn't like. What about the watch? Serial puts it on an insurance claim from a break last month, different borough. The caseback has micro-scratches consistent with a recent open. Like someone checked the number and then closed it again. Planting verified goods, I said. So if we catch a runner with it, the DA has a clean line. Soria nodded and scraped her scalpel across the velvet roll. Also, I'm lifting pollen from the fabric none of the jewelers would have. Ragweed and friar oil. You tell me who's got that combo. Manny's, I said before I could stop the word. The diner's vents breathed grease like a confession. I logged the photo. Chain of custody. It felt like handing over a memory. Ruiz watched me sign and slid me a paper cup of bad coffee. You good? He asked. I'm working, I said. On my desk, Klein glared from an old mugshot, comma scar near the ear, a cocky little squint. He flipped on his crew and got a deal the DA regretted before the ink dried. He'd done 9 months on weekends and walked on probation into honest work at a garage named Klein's Auto and Glass. Cute. His last listed address was a motel off the freeway that rented by the week. I called the motel before I told anyone I was leaving. The clerk picked up halfway through his greeting and finished with a yawn. This is Detective Vega. I need your guest log for rooms paid cash, last 10 days, any under the name Klein. We don't take names, he lied automatically. You took one yesterday, I said. I can be there with a warrant in 40, or you can save yourself the part where I find roaches in your fire alarm and write you up for every missing smoke detector. He hesitated. Paper rustled. Room 212. Paid cash. No ID. I'm on my way. In the sally port, Chen intercepted me like she'd been reading my footsteps. Where? Riverside Motor Lodge. Klein's likely there. You should take a partner. They'll see too. Exactly. I texted Ochoa, my favorite optimist with a badge, and he met me in the lot with a grin and a vest. Fun run? He asked. Just a chat, I said, which is how all the bad nights start. The Riverside wore its age like a tired waitress, layers of paint, a brave smile, too much eyeliner. The clerk had a newspaper and a devotional on the counter. He slid the log without eye contact. Room 212 had been paid 3 nights, cash. The camera over the ice machine was old but not dead. We took the feed into the back office, and he pretended to be too bored to care. At 19:08 the previous night, a gray Honda pulled in. Plate half-taped, camera caught the piece that mattered, a registration sticker that matched the one from our 158 cam still. Klein got out, the scar flashing when he turned. He opened the passenger door for a man who moved like a man who's used to being deferred to. Tall, silver hair, posture like a number 7. Lupo at 60, maybe. Or his ghost. The camera caught his face only as a reflection in the ice machine's chrome lip, but it was enough to make my stomach tighten. He carried nothing. Klein carried a paper bag the size of a velvet roll. "Check 212, I told the clerk. "I'm not supposed." "Warrants make me hungry," Ochoa said, and smiled without humor. The door to 212 opened on the second knock. No one inside. Air like cigarettes and carpet cleaner. A flip phone disassembled on the nightstand. A Kiteflex box in the trash. On the bedside table, a coffee cup ring over a Manny's napkin. Someone had written numbers on the napkin in pencil, then erased hard. Under the erasures, pressed into the thin paper, 3 letters, DV, VL, and a date from 19 years ago. You don't need a forensic kit when the past leaves grooves. Ochoa took photos while I pulled the bedside Bible off the shelf, because criminals are pilgrims in their own way. Between Leviticus and Numbers, a room key fell into my palm. Not a motel key, an old-fashioned brass skeleton key with a stamp tag, Manny's, back hall. "You seeing this?" Ochoa whistled low. "What I'm seeing is a man who wants me to see," I said. We cleared the room. No latent prints on anything we could lift quickly. Whoever stayed there knew their way around our habits. I bagged the napkin anyway. I took the key. I told the clerk to fix his deadbolt or I'd fix it for him with a citation. In the car, Ochoa drummed the dash. "You think Lupo called you?" The voice felt like sandpaper. "You're really going to Manny's?" "Not today," I said, which is different than no. "Today I go back to the shop." On the way, I called my mother and listened to her not pick up. The city rolled by with its usual tone-deaf music, sirens in one key, laughter in another, a dog barking in staccato. I thought about my father and his Sunday hands, big and gentle, folding my fingers around a cup of milk while he drank coffee and talked to Lupo about community. I have exactly 5 clear memories of that man before he wore the uniform like a second skin, and one of them is Manny's. What do you do when the postcard you've saved from childhood is postmarked from a crime scene? Back at the precinct, Ruiz met me with a raised eyebrow and a complaint. "I asked why you were off-grid for an hour." "Tell them I was buying a sandwich," I said, and handed him the chain of custody bag with the Manny's key. "And tell Soria I love her." Soria didn't look up from her scope. "You didn't log love at the window," she said, but there was a smile in it. "I got you something." The pollen I lifted from the velvet, mixed with a microgrit that's unique to one brand of ceramic tile cleaner. "Guess who uses it?" "Manny's." She nodded. "And 6 other diners in a 12-block radius, but only one that shows up on your childhood photos. Traffic cams near Manny's the last 3 Sundays?" I asked. She glanced over her monitor. "Already scraping." IA pinged me again. Chin wanted an update. I typed, "Found key linked to Manny's back hall. Possible meet site. Klein and Lupo likely in play. Awaiting lab." I did not type. My father's initials hurt my hands when I hold them. At 1812, the gray Honda's plate hit a city cam 2 blocks from Manny's. Ochoa leaned over my screen. "They're comfortable. They're fishing," I said. "And we're the fish." My phone buzzed. New number. Text only, Sunday, 2 p.m. booth 3. Don't bring friends. Bring the photo. I stared at the words until they blurred. The photo was in evidence. If I pulled it, IA would light me up. If I didn't, the man who trained my father and the man who trained my thief would decide the terms without me. I wrote back, "I don't retrieve evidence for civilians." 3 dots. Then, "You're not retrieving it for me. You're retrieving it for the story you tell yourself about your father." Ochoa watched my face change. "What now?" "Now," I said, and my voice sounded like somebody else's, "we do the thing I hate." "What's that?" "We ask for permission." I walked to IA with my palms open, because some doors you don't pick. Chen listened while I laid out the motel, the key, the text. She didn't blink at the part where the initials matched my father's. When I asked to sign the photo out for an operational meet, she sat quiet for 5 long beats. You know, if this goes sideways, we feed you to the wolves, she said, flat. I've been in the wolf's mouth since 213, I said. She signed. You go wired. You go with eyes on. You don't go alone. Text says no friends. Then text is out of policy, she said. And so are you if you honor it. I took the form and the photo and a breath that didn't reach my lungs. At my locker, I stared at my father's name on the city's old memorial flyers tucked inside the door. Some ghosts stand behind you and push. Some sit across from you in a diner booth and smile like they're doing you a favor. On my way out, my phone buzzed one more time. Same unknown number, voice this time, a soft chuckle over the line. Detective Vega, he said, velvet and smoke. Booth 3 is where you sat on your 10th birthday. Manny put a candle in your pancake. Your father told you to make a wish. You wished to be like him. The line clicked dead. I looked down and realized my hands were shaking the way they did the first time I drew my weapon for real. I didn't know, until that moment, whether I wanted the wish to come true. Sunday didn't wait for me. It arrived like it always does, ordinary, unbothered by the weight people put on it. I dressed light, no uniform, no vest, plain jeans and a black shirt. The wire was taped under my collarbone, its transmitter small enough to disappear under denim. Ochoa and 2 others from surveillance had their van parked a block from Manny's, coffee cup steaming, antennas hidden in the clutter of old fast food bags. I carried the photo in an evidence envelope inside a manila folder, just like a cop carrying paperwork should. The only thing betraying me was the tightness in my jaw. Manny's looked the same as it had in childhood, which was to say, never really clean, never really dirty, eternal in its own grease. The neon sign flickered like an old heartbeat. Inside, it smelled of bacon fat and disinfectant that had long since given up. The same laminated menus, the same red vinyl booths patched with duct tape. A couple of regulars hunched over their eggs, not looking at anyone else. The back hall door had a fresh brass lock, my key in a bag at evidence, but I didn't need to open it to know I was stepping into a place that remembered me. Booth 3 was half shaded by the busted light fixture overhead. A man sat there with his back to the wall, gray Honda keys on the table, untouched cup of coffee steaming in front of him. Silver hair, still full. Skin pulled taut in a way that spoke of old vanity. Lupo. He'd aged like someone who believed time had rules for other men but not for him. His eyes found me the way a tailor finds seams. I slid into the booth opposite. You kept the appointment, he said. His voice was the same one from the call. Smoke and sandpaper. Appointments are easier than warrants, I said. My hands stayed loose on the table. The recorder in my chest itched. Why the theatrics? Why frame a kid? Why dangle my father's photo? He tapped one finger on the formica, slow, deliberate. Because truth gets ignored unless it hurts. Pain is the only thing that forces attention. You wouldn't have come otherwise. I'm here now. He slid a folded napkin across the table. Inside, a single Polaroid, washed-out colors, time-stamped in the corner. My father, Captain Daniel Vega, in plain clothes, standing with Lupo and another man in a narrow hallway. Behind them, Manny's wallpaper, old coffee stains like maps. The third man was younger, scar near his ear like a punctuation mark. Klein. They were all smiling like the world was theirs. That was the first time your father brought me a new student, Lupo said. Klein learned fast. Too fast. He was always impatient, hungry. You're telling me my father recruited thieves. I'm telling you your father believed locks weren't just for keeping things out. He believed knowing how to open them was power. He thought training a few of us might keep the city balanced. Some learned honor. Some learned greed. That's not on him. My throat closed around the words. The wire on my chest hummed silent, carrying every syllable to the van outside. And you expect me to believe you're the honorable one? He leaned forward, eyes sharp. I expect you to believe I'm still alive when everyone else is dead or rotting. That counts for something. The waitress passed by with a coffee pot. She topped us off without meeting eyes, like she knew she wasn't supposed to listen. When she left, I unfolded the envelope, placed the photo of my father and Lupo outside the diner. "This is the one you wanted." He didn't touch it. He only smiled, the kind of smile that has an edge. "That's the beginning. I wanted you to see it in daylight. You said I'd find the man who framed Miles. Where is he?" "Closer than you think." He tapped the napkin again. "Klein wanted to be your father's heir. But when your father died, he had no master left. He started building his own crew. That's what you call the elders. He's not framing kids to protect himself. He's framing them because he doesn't know how to stop playing the game." "Then why bring me in?" "Because you're the one person who can't ignore it. Because you're the only one with the bloodline and the badge. Klein respects that, even if he won't admit it. And because I'm tired. Tired enough to confess." He laughed, low and broken. "Confession is for priests. I want closure. Klein's out of control. He'll burn the city to ash trying to prove he's the better lockpick. That photo proves your father chose him once. Only you can show he was wrong." The words dug under my ribs. My father's hand on my shoulder, teaching me to see locks as puzzles. Klein's scar, smug in a courtroom. The idea of my father choosing him, it soured the air around me. I leaned in. "You're saying you want me to take him down?" "I'm saying I'll give you what you need. But it won't be free." There it was. Always a price. "What's the cost?" "Erase my past. You've got the badge, the leverage. IA's already sniffing. Make it go away. In return, I give you Klein's ledger. Names, jobs, money trails. You get to hang him and his whole new family on your wall." The temptation sat heavy between us. A ledger like that could end months of dead ends, tie off every elder hit, maybe even salvage my father's reputation by proving Klein was the cancer. But IA was already in my ear, already suspicious. They'd never let me make a deal in the dark. "You're asking me to commit obstruction," I said. "I'm asking you to finish what your father started." He blurred lines so you could walk straighter ones. "That ledger will prove it." My wire hummed silent, feeding his words to Chen, to Ochoa, to whoever else was leaning over a console in that van. I wondered if they were staring at each other, wondering if I'd shake his hand or put cuffs on him. My palms were sweating. I thought of Miles in the cell, folded hands, waiting for someone to believe him. "Where's the ledger?" I asked. "Safe place. I'll call when it's ready. You'll know it's me. Why should I trust you?" "You shouldn't," he said, and smiled again. "But you already do, just enough." The diner door opened. Cold air swept in. A figure stood in the entry, blocking the neon light. Klein. Scar like a comma, eyes narrow. He scanned the booths, found me, found Lupo. His jaw set like steel. He started walking toward us, each step a nail in the floor. Lupo didn't flinch. He sat back, coffee cup steady. "Looks like class is back in session." I slid my hand under the table, fingers brushing the grip of my concealed piece. My heart beat in my ears. The wire on my chest hummed like a second pulse. Outside, Ochoa's voice crackled faint in my earpiece. "We've got eyes on Klein." "Orders." Chen's voice cut in, cool and decisive. "Hold position. We need Vega's call." Klein stopped at the edge of the booth, eyes darting between me and Lupo. He smiled without warmth. "Detective. Long time. Funny seeing you here." "Funny isn't the word I'd use," I said. His eyes flicked to the photo on the table. For half a second, his mask slipped. Hunger. Rage. Then it was gone. He leaned down, close enough I could smell the motel cigarettes on him. "You don't know what you're holding. That picture doesn't show loyalty. It shows betrayal." "Your betrayal?" I asked. "My teacher's," he said, eyes on Lupo. "And maybe your father's, too." Lupo didn't blink. He only sipped his coffee. "Careful, boy. You're not ready to play with those truths." Klein straightened, his scar pulling taut. "Sunday lessons over. Detective, We'll be seeing each other soon. You'll have to pick which story you believe. Yours, mine, or the one he's selling." He turned and walked out, slow, confident. No rush. No fear. Like he knew the city itself would cover his tracks. I sat frozen, the Polaroid burning into my vision, the man across from me smirking, the van outside waiting for my word. My finger itched against the grip of my weapon, but my gut whispered, "Not yet." Some locks take more than one turn. I stayed in that booth long enough for the coffee to go cold. Lupo didn't move, didn't twitch when Klein left. He just kept his hands around the cup, like warmth was the only thing keeping him human. The silence dragged until I couldn't stand it anymore. "What was that?" I asked. "A reminder," he said, "that your father's lessons don't end just because the teacher's gone. Klein still wants to prove he's the best student. He's building a classroom out of the whole city." "And you?" "I'm the alumni," Lupo said, smiling with those tired eyes. "I know the curriculum too well to take it seriously." I hated how easily he could turn sentences into riddles. I stood, left the photo on the table. "If you have that ledger, bring it to me. Until then, you're just another story." He didn't stop me. He didn't need to. His smile followed me out like a hook in the back. Outside, Ochoa slid out of the van, his expression tight. "You had both of them in arm's reach," he hissed. "Why didn't you give the word?" "Because neither of them would have flinched. And because I need more than bragging before I can put bracelets on ghosts." Chen's voice came through the comms, cold enough to crack glass. "Detective Vega, report upstairs. Now." The ride back to IA felt like walking into court without knowing the charges. Chen sat at her desk, the Polaroid I'd retrieved from Lupo already scanned and glowing on her monitor. My father's face stared back at me, smile untroubled, arm around Klein like a brother. Every pixel stabbed. "You had both suspects," Chen said. "You let them walk." I had two men in a crowded diner, both armed, both surrounded by civilians. "You want me to start a firefight over a Polaroid?" "What I want," Chen said, "is for you to remember which side of the table you sit on. You're not a historian, you're a cop." I swallowed hard. "And if my father was part of this? What side does that put me on?" Chen's eyes softened just enough to register as human. "You're on the side that cleans up his mess." The ledger. The word kept bouncing in my skull like a ricochet. If Lupo wasn't bluffing, it could bury Klein and maybe clear my father's name, or smear it forever. I needed it, and I needed it before either of them decided to vanish. Miles was my next stop. He'd been processed into holding, waiting for arraignment, his public defender filing motions like buckets against a flood. He looked up when I entered the interview room, face pale under the fluorescent glare. "You saw them," he said. "Not a question. You saw the men behind all this." "I saw enough to know you're not lying," I admitted. "But truth isn't a currency in this building. Evidence is." His hands trembled as he folded them on the table. "Then you need that ledger." "You know about it?" He nodded. Klein bragged. Said he was building something bigger than my case. Said the ledger was insurance. If anyone came after him, he'd drop it and the whole city would choke. "Where?" Miles hesitated. He never said. But he kept going back to Manny's. "Every Sunday, booth 3. Like it was sacred. The same booth where I just sat." My stomach twisted. "Why tell me now?" "Because I'm already buried," he said. "Maybe you dig me out if you catch the ones who pushed me in." When I left, Ruiz handed me a folder. "Prince came back from the motel room," he said. "Partial match on the Kiteflex box. Belongs to Klein. But here's the twist, there's a second set. Unidentified. Not in AFIS. Not Lupo. Not unless he changed his fingers. That was worse. A third player. Another student, maybe. Someone still in the shadows." That night, I drove past Manny's twice, headlights off. The diner looked harmless, tired, like it didn't hold secrets in its walls. But the brass key in evidence said otherwise, and the grooves in that napkin were burned into my mind. DV, VL. My father and Lupo, locked into paper like ghosts. The date matched the first Elder hit on record. Back home, I pulled out my father's old box of keepsakes. Commendations, medals, a watch he'd worn every day until the heart attack took him. At the bottom, an envelope I hadn't touched since the funeral. Inside was a photo of my 10th birthday, me with cake crumbs on my shirt, my father's arm around me, and Manny's neon glowing in the background. Booth 3. Same angle. Same smile. I slept 2 hours, maybe 3, dreams thick with locks clicking open and closing again. When morning came, Chen had already sent a message, surveillance on Manny's, Booth 3, Sunday 2 p.m. We move in only if you signal. Sunday was still 6 days away. Too long. Klein wouldn't wait that long to flex. And sure enough, by noon we had another call. Jewelry store on Franklin. Same MO, alarm bypassed, display emptied, nothing on the cameras but a blur. But this time there was a clue. Soria pulled a fragment from the floor, a piece of tape with fibers clinging. Not just any fibers, uniform fabric, police issue. Someone on the inside. Chen's jaw set when I showed her. If Klein's got a cop feeding him intel, this ledger of his isn't just about theft. It's about corruption. We're not just talking about stolen stones anymore. The idea chilled me. An inside man meant every move we made was compromised. It meant my father's shadow might not be the only one hanging over me. That night, as I sat at my kitchen table with files spread out, my phone buzzed again. Unknown number. Text only, ledger moves tonight. Riverside. Same room. My pulse jumped. If it was real, this was my shot. If it was a trap, it was tailored for me. I grabbed my badge, my gun, and the ghost of my father's voice whispering that some locks aren't meant to be opened. Then I drove into the dark. The Riverside Motor Lodge hadn't changed since the last time I'd walked its stained carpet and breathed its cigarette ghosts. Same clerk pretending not to notice, same flickering vacancy sign buzzing like a loose wire. Room 212 waited on the second floor, blinds drawn, a dull orange glow bleeding out from between them. My hand hovered near my holster as I climbed the stairs, the message replaying in my head. Ledger moves tonight. Ochoa had wanted to tail me. Chen had insisted on backup. But the text was clear. Same room, tonight. If it was Klein, he'd bolt the moment he saw a tail. If it was Lupo, he'd vanish into shadow like smoke. Sometimes the only way to catch a ghost is to walk into their room alone and hope you're faster. The door wasn't locked. It swung open on a sigh, like someone had already expected me. Inside, the air was thick with motel cleaner and cheap whiskey. The TV murmured static. On the bed sat a manila envelope, fat enough to choke a shredder. No one else. I edged inside, closed the door. The wire on my chest hummed to life, carrying my heartbeat to Ochoa and Chen in the van down the street. My gloved hand picked up the envelope. Ledger pages, handwritten columns of dates, addresses, coded names. Jewelry stores, pawn shops, warehouses. Some I recognized from open cases, others I'd never seen. At the bottom, a list titled Teachers. 3 names. V.L. Victor Lupo. D.V. Daniel Vega. Unknown, marked only with a symbol, a circle with a diagonal slash through it. My chest tightened. My father's initials on paper, locked in with Lupo like he was co-author of the crimes. The bathroom door creaked. Instinct had my weapon drawn, leveled before I even thought. A figure stepped out, hands raised. Miles. Detective Vega, he said, voice ragged. I told you I wasn't lying. I kept the gun on him. How the hell did you get out of holding? Somebody wanted me here, he said, eyes darting to the ledger. They posted my bail in cash. Told me to deliver a message. Who? He swallowed. The man with the scar. Klein. The wire caught everything, but the silence on the other end told me Chun wasn't ready to send backup yet. I lowered my gun just enough to keep control. What's the message? That he's not the villain in your story. That ledger you're holding? He says it's a fake. Planted so you'd believe your father was dirty. The room tilted. And what does he gain by handing me this? He says if you chase the wrong trail, the real crew keeps running. He says Lupo's the one feeding you these crumbs, not him. And he says, Miles hesitated, then pushed the words out like they burned. He says your father isn't who you think he was. I wanted to slam him against the wall until he stopped talking. Instead, I forced myself to breathe. Why send you? Because you'd believe me before you'd believe him. Because I'm the only one you didn't put cuffs on when he told me to run. Outside, tires screeched. Doors slammed. Miles flinched. I crossed to the window just in time to see a gray Honda peel out of the lot, headlights off. Klein. He'd been close enough to watch. I snapped to Miles. What else did he tell you? That if you don't pick soon, someone else will pick for you. He said the ledger's bait. That the real records are somewhere only you would look. Where? He shook his head. He didn't say. Just, Manny's. Booth 3. Always booth 3. A knock pounded at the door. Vega, open up. Ochoa's voice. Backup had arrived, too late to catch the Honda. I shoved the ledger into an evidence bag, cuffed Miles again, and pulled the door open. Ochoa's eyes went wide when he saw the stack of papers. You got it. I got something, I said. Back at the precinct, Chen studied the ledger under sterile light. Her expression didn't change as she turned the pages. Could be real. Could be forged. The handwriting varies. Some matches old files, some doesn't. She tapped the teacher's list. This is what he wanted you to see. My father's initials, I said. And an unknown, Chen added. The circle mark. I've seen that before. She pulled up an old case file, grainy photos of spray paint scrawled on a jewelry store wall. The same circle/symbol. Marked at 3 different elder scenes. So the unknown's still active, I said. Or pulling strings from above, Chen replied. Which makes this ledger dangerous. If it's bait, it's designed to break your trust. If it's real, it means your father was deeper in than anyone admitted. Ochoa leaned against the wall, arms crossed. So what now? We've got 2 devils pointing at each other and a book full of maybe. Chen closed the file. Now we bait the hook back. Sunday, Manny's. Booth 3. But this time we control the board. I didn't sleep that night. I sat at my kitchen table, the ledger spread out like a map of sins. My father's face stared at me from the Polaroid, his smile too easy, too real. If he was dirty, everything I'd built on his name crumbled. If he was clean, I was being played by men who'd learned to twist locks and people alike. Just before dawn, my phone buzzed again. Unknown number. A single text. Not all students honor their teacher. Some kill him. I stared until the letters blurred, then typed back before I could stop myself. Who killed my father? No answer. Only silence. The text haunted me all morning. Some kill him. The words burned holes through every memory I had of my father's last day. Heart attack at the precinct gym, that's what the report said. No autopsy. The family declined, trusting the word of doctors who'd known him for years. But now all I could think about was the possibility that his death wasn't nature but design. I took the ledger to evidence again, logged it formally this time. No more keeping ghosts in my apartment. Chen insisted on chain of custody, and I didn't argue. But before I sealed it, I photocopied the teacher's page, slipped the copy into my wallet. I needed the initials near me, like a wound you don't let scab over. Miles sat in holding, pale and restless, waiting for arraignment. His public defender begged me not to push him harder, but I couldn't ignore him. I went in anyway. He sat hunched over the table, eyes rimmed red. You delivered Klein's message, I said. Now deliver your own. What do you actually want? To live, he whispered. Klein set me up as a disposable piece. If I stay locked up, his people silence me. If I walk, the cops eat me alive. Either way, I don't see daylight. You think helping me changes that? I think helping you is the only card I have left. You caught me, detective. But maybe I can catch them. I leaned closer. Tell me something I don't know. Miles swallowed. The circle mark in the ledger? That's not just a symbol. It's a name. They call him Cypher. Nobody sees his face. He's the one who decides which students pass and which ones burn. Cipher. The word scratched against the inside of my skull. Another ghost in a story already too crowded. Back upstairs, Chen studied me with sharp eyes. Heard you pulled more out of the kid. What do you believe? I believe someone wants me chasing phantoms. But the name keeps showing up. Cipher might be real. Or a smokescreen, Chen said. Either way, Manny's on Sunday is still our best chance to catch them talking. I drove past Manny's that night again, headlights dark. The diner was quiet, only 3 booths filled with truckers and night shift nurses. Booth 3 sat empty, the vinyl cracked, neon washing it pale pink. I parked down the block, staring at it like it could answer me. Then I noticed something odd, the back hall door, the one with the brass lock. A man stepped out, glanced up and down the street, then disappeared into an alley. I only caught his silhouette, tall, shoulders straight, moving like he owned shadows. Not Klein. Not Lupo. Someone else. By the time I circled the block, he was gone. Back at my apartment, I dug into my father's old boxes again. Service commendations, photos, retirement letters he never got to use. At the bottom of one envelope was a folded napkin. Manny's logo faint under a ring of coffee. Written on it in my father's handwriting, "Some doors shouldn't open." I stared at the note until my vision blurred. Was it a warning? A confession? Both. The next day, Chen called me into her office. She closed the blinds, leaned back in her chair. We ran handwriting on the ledger. Mixed results. Some pages might match Lupo's prison letters from the 90s. Others look like Klein's. And a few, she hesitated, show similarities to your father's reports. My stomach dropped. That's impossible. Not impossible. Just unbearable. I left before she could see how much it shook me. Ochoa found me in the parking lot, leaning on my car. You look like someone stole your badge. They might have stolen my father, I said. He lit a cigarette, offered me one. I shook my head. Look, Vega. You can't solve this case if you're chasing your dad's ghost. You need to decide if you're after justice or closure. What if they're the same thing? Then you'd better hope Sunday delivers. That night, another message. Same unknown number. This time, an image. My father, older than the Polaroid, sitting in booth 3 with Lupo. A date stamped in the corner, 3 weeks before his death. I zoomed in until the pixels bled. His hands were on the table, folded. A napkin sat under them, marked with the same circle/symbol from the ledger. The caption under the image read, "Ask yourself why a teacher dies before the final lesson." I wanted to smash the phone. Instead, I drove again, this time not to Manny's but to the cemetery. I stood at my father's grave, the bronze plaque polished by years of weather. "What were you doing?" I whispered. "Who were you really teaching?" The night didn't answer. Only the wind, rattling the leaves like dry bones. When I got back in the car, the phone buzzed again. Another text. Sunday, booth 3. Bring the copy of the ledger page. Or someone else dies. I looked at the Polaroid of my father in my wallet, at the initials scrawled on the ledger page. DV, VL. Cipher. My father's shadow stretched longer every day. And Sunday was coming fast. I typed back, "You'll see me there." No reply. Just silence, heavy as a locked door waiting to turn. Sunday came like a sentence already written. Clouds pressed low, heavy with rain that hadn't started yet, the city caught in the pause before the fall. I dressed like a civilian again, wire taped to my chest, Glock at my hip. Chen's voice was the last thing I heard before stepping out of the van. Eyes on, audio clear. "You control the signal. Don't go hero." Manny's looked the same as always, eternal in its tiredness. Inside, the hum of the fridge, the clink of silverware, a jukebox that hadn't been updated since the 80s. Booth 3 waited under the sick pink neon bleeding through the window. Someone was already there. Lupo. He sat with his back to the wall, a newspaper open but unread. Beside his cup of coffee was a small black notebook, rubber-banded shut. He didn't smile this time. He just gestured for me to sit. "You brought the copy," he said. I slid the folded ledger page across the table. He didn't touch it. That symbol, he said, tapping the circle slash. Cipher. You've heard the name by now. I didn't answer. He was the real teacher, Lupo continued. Your father and I, we were just caretakers. Cipher wrote the lessons. We passed them on. Until your father tried to stop. Stop what? Stop training new hands. He thought the game had gone too far. That Klein was too reckless. That students weren't learning discipline, only greed. Cipher didn't like that. My throat tightened. Are you saying Cipher killed him? Lupo's eyes flicked up to mine. I'm saying your father's heart gave out after a meal he didn't finish. And Cipher was the only one at the table with him. The words cut deep. My father's death certificate flashed in my head, cardiac arrest. What if it hadn't been nature? What if it had been poison, timed perfectly? Before I could ask more, the diner door opened. Klein walked in, scar glinting under the neon. He carried nothing, but his hands were too loose, too ready. He slid into the booth opposite me, forcing me into the middle. The air grew tight. Well, Klein said, family reunion. You shouldn't be here, Lupo muttered. You shouldn't either, Klein shot back. Then he looked at me. Detective Vega. Has he told you yet? That your father was no saint? That he trained us the same way he trained you to spot liars? Only difference is we listened harder. You framed Miles, I said. Klein smirked. Collateral. A kid who thought he could keep up. Better he burn than the whole program. And the ledger? I asked. His smirk faded. Planted. Every page Lupo gives you is written to bury me. To bury your father too. Think about it. If I wanted leverage, why would I hand you proof? No. He's the one who needs you chasing me while Cipher cleans house. The name hung in the air like smoke. Lupo finally touched the ledger page, sliding it back toward me. Cipher doesn't care who burns. He just wants the machine running. Klein's reckless, yes. But Cipher's cruel. Klein leaned in. You really think this relic tells you truth? He's been lying since before you were born. Ask him who taught your father how to open a lock. Lupo's jaw tightened. Ask him, Klein pushed. I did. Who? For the first time, Lupo looked old. Cipher, he whispered. The booth went silent. Outside, rain started, tapping against the neon. My earpiece crackled, Ochoa's voice low. We've got 2 targets, both armed. Say the word, Vega. But I couldn't. Not yet. Too much was coiled in front of me. Then the diner door banged open. A man stepped in, tall, shoulders squared, a hood shadowing his face. He moved like the silhouette I'd seen slip out the back hall earlier that week. He stopped 3 booths away. No one breathed. Cipher, Lupo murmured, almost reverent. The man pulled down his hood. Not young, not old, face plain enough to vanish in a crowd. But his eyes, flat, calculating, the kind that never blink unless it mattered. He looked at me first, then at Klein, then at Lupo. Teachers' conference, he said calmly, voice low but carrying. 1 too many students in this room. My pulse hammered. I glanced at the window where I knew the van sat parked. Eyes on, I whispered, barely moving my lips. Cipher slid into the next booth, leaning across the divider so his presence pressed against all of us. Detective Vega. Your father was loyal. Misguided at the end, but loyal. He understood that power comes from teaching others how to unlock doors. You have the same gift. And the same choice. What choice? My voice cracked sharper than I wanted. To preserve the program or end it. If you preserve it, you guide it. If you end it, you bury your father's legacy with it. Klein's jaw tightened. She's not going to follow you. Cipher ignored him. Your father's last words were about you. He wanted you to inherit his role. Not the badge. The key. His blood in you is stronger than the uniform. I felt the diner walls closing in. Lupo, Klein, Cipher, all staring at me, each telling a different version of my father's truth. Outside, my wire carried every word to IA. Inside, my heart was splitting down the middle. Then Cypher reached into his jacket. My hand flew to my Glock, half drawn. But he didn't pull a gun. He set a small brass key on the table. Stamped into it, DV. "This was your father's," Cypher said. "His last key. It opens the place where he kept everything. The truth. You want to know who he really was? Use it. Or stay blind." The key sat there, gleaming under the neon, daring me. Outside, Chen's voice finally came through the earpiece. "Vega, signal. Now." But my hand hovered over the key instead. The brass key lay between us like a loaded weapon. Stamped DV. My father's initials, carved into metal. Cypher's eyes pinned me as if he'd already seen my decision. Lupo looked away, ashamed or afraid. Klein grinned like a wolf watching a rabbit hesitate at the snare. My pulse was so loud in my ears I almost missed Chen's voice in the wire. "Detective Vega, do not touch that key. Do not break chain of custody." But my hand moved anyway. Not to pick it up, just to feel the cold of the brass against my fingertip. Proof my father had left something behind, something I hadn't seen. Cypher's smile was thin. "You feel it, don't you? Weight isn't in the metal. It's in the story." I pulled my hand back, forced myself to breathe. "Where does it lead?" Cypher didn't answer. He just pushed the key closer, like temptation itself. "Your father left a deposit box. A room that holds the lessons he didn't want burned with him. Use the key, and you'll know whether he was saint or sinner. But understand, once you open it, you can't close it again." Ochoa's whisper crackled in my ear. "Vega, we've got TAC teams staged. Call it." I gave the tiniest shake of my head, as if he could see me. Because I knew the second I signaled, Cypher would vanish into smoke. He wasn't the kind to get caught in fluorescent light. Klein leaned back, arms spread across the booth. "Don't listen. It's another trick. He wants you chasing shadows while he keeps the program alive. That key could open a broom closet, could open a grave." Lupo finally spoke, voice low and bitter. "It opens truth. But truth doesn't save anyone. It only decides who bleeds first." Cypher chuckled. "Still a poet, Victor." Then his gaze slid back to me. "Decide, detective. You want to be a daughter? Or a cop?" That question sliced me clean. Because I knew exactly what he meant. A cop would bag the key as evidence, never touch it again. A daughter would find the box and rip it open, even if it burned. I opened my mouth, but the decision was stolen. The diner window exploded inward, glass raining across the booths. Shouts outside, tires screeching. Gunfire cracked sharp and fast. Someone else had made their move. Cypher moved like lightning, sweeping the key back into his jacket and sliding out of the booth in one fluid motion. Klein dove to the floor, hand going for a pistol I hadn't seen until now. Lupo just froze, his old eyes wide, as if he'd known this moment was coming all along. I hit the ground behind the booth, Glock out, wire buzzing with chaos. Chen shouting, Ochoa calling positions, static flooding the channel. Through the shattered window I caught sight of figures in black masks pouring out of a van. 4, maybe 5. Not cops. Not ours. Cypher fired first. Controlled, efficient, like he'd done it 1,000 times. One of the masked men dropped before he even cleared the glass. Another crashed against a table, spraying ketchup bottles across the floor. Klein used the distraction to bolt for the back hall. I started to go after him, but Cypher's voice snapped across the chaos. "Not him. You'll lose everything." Then he vanished into the smoke of gunpowder, slipping through the broken window like it was his exit door all along. Ochoa and 2 uniforms stormed in seconds later, weapons drawn, barking commands. By then, the masked men who weren't bleeding had already scattered, leaving one body twitching on the tile. Lupo sat frozen in the booth, coffee cup still upright in front of him as if nothing had changed. I kept my Glock on him. Who were they? His lips trembled. Cypher's reminder. Or Klein's cleanup. Doesn't matter anymore. You saw it, didn't you? The key. Chen's voice cut sharp through my earpiece. Secure the scene. Vega, bring Lupo in. Alive. I cuffed him myself, pressing his face into the sticky tile while he muttered about teachers and students. Ochoa bagged the dropped weapons, found no markings, no prints. Professionals. But the key was gone. Cypher had taken it back. Hours later, back at IA, the room buzzed with frustration. Chen paced in front of the evidence board, photos of Klein, Lupo, and the grainy capture of Cypher's hooded silhouette pinned side by side. The Polaroids of my father sat beside them, smiling like he was part of the same constellation. "You had them all in one room," Chen said, her tone sharp enough to cut steel. "Cypher, Klein, Lupo. And we have nothing but glass and blood to show for it." "I didn't order the shootout," I snapped. "No. But someone did. And until we find out who, you're chasing shadows with ghosts." I dropped into a chair, rubbing my eyes. "He had my father's key. He said it opened a deposit box. Somewhere my father left the truth." Chen's eyes softened, but only slightly. "You want to believe that? Maybe it's bait, maybe it's real. Either way, you're compromised now." She didn't have to say the rest. IA was watching me as closely as they were watching Cypher. Later, Ochoa found me in the hallway. He pressed a folded note into my hand. One of the uniforms found this slipped into his vest during the chaos. Address written on it. I unfolded it. An old bank downtown, abandoned 5 years ago after a merger. Scrawled under the address, Box 319. "Bring the key." But I didn't have the key. Cypher did. Which meant either he wanted me there empty-handed, or he was daring me to steal it back. I tucked the note into my jacket. Looked at the board again. My father's initials staring at me from the ledger copy. If he'd really left something in that box, then Cypher had the lock. And I was running out of time to prove which side of the door my father truly stood on. The abandoned bank looked like a mausoleum for money. Boarded windows, weeds splitting the sidewalk, marble facade streaked with grime. Downtown had moved on years ago, but the building still loomed, waiting. Box 319. That was the number scrawled on the note. I parked a block away, engine off. The street was quiet except for a homeless man pushing a cart and a dog sniffing trash. My Glock sat heavy at my hip, wire taped under my shirt. Ochoa and a surveillance team staged 3 streets over. Chen had wanted to flood the place with TAC gear. I'd said no. If Cypher wanted a meeting, an army would scare him off. This had to look like I was walking in alone. The front doors were chained but not locked. Someone had cut the padlock recently, the steel edges bright. Inside, the air was cool and stale, the kind of silence that presses against your ears. Dust lay thick on the teller counters. Old posters peeled from the walls, promising interest rates from another decade. At the back, the vault door yawned open. Not forced, cracked clean. Inside, rows of deposit boxes lined the walls like teeth. Most were pried open, empty, their doors bent like metal mouths screaming. But halfway down the row, one remained intact. 319. Its brass plate was polished, gleaming against the decay. I approached slowly, flashlight cutting the dust. No one else. Just me, the box, and the ghosts in my head. My father's key was gone, stolen back by Cypher, but the lock had been tampered with. Scratches around the keyhole, fresh. Someone had already been here. I crouched, heart pounding, and tried my lockpicks. The tumblers resisted, then gave with a click. The door creaked open. Inside was a leather-bound journal, edges cracked, pages swollen from years of handling. My father's handwriting covered the first page. Sharp, deliberate letters. Daniel Vega, Lessons Learned. I didn't breathe as I opened it. Each page was filled with notes, diagrams, names. Some about lock mechanisms, burglary patterns, case files I recognized from the archives. Others, lessons. Not police lessons. Lessons about entry, about teaching students how to use discipline with crime the same way a cop uses procedure. A good thief leaves no trace. A good teacher leaves no student behind. My throat closed. This wasn't just evidence. It was confession. My father had trained them. Lupo, Klein, maybe others. He hadn't been the saint the city believed. A sound echoed behind me, footsteps on marble. I spun, Glock up. Cypher stood in the vault doorway, calm as ever. The brass key dangled from his fingers. "You opened it without me," he said, almost amused. "You left it for me," I shot back. He stepped closer, eyes steady. "I wanted you to know. Not from me. From him." "This proves everything," I said, voice shaking. "He was dirty. He trained you." Cypher tilted his head. "Or he was trying to control us. He believed in balance. The badge on one hand, the key in the other. He thought teaching both sides would keep the city honest." I shook the journal. "This is corruption." "This is survival," Cypher corrected. "Without your father, half the city's underworld would have eaten the other half. He kept order. Until he grew weak. I wanted to fire. Wanted to put a hole in his calm face. But I couldn't, not yet." "Did you kill him?" For the first time, Cypher hesitated. Then he said, "I let him die. There's a difference." The words hit harder than a bullet. He asked me to stop Klein. To end the program if it went too far. But he didn't have the strength anymore. So I gave him peace. Rage boiled in me. "Peace? You poisoned him." Cypher didn't flinch. "I ended his suffering. He was torn between you and us. Between the badge and the key. He couldn't carry both anymore." I raised my Glock. "You're coming with me." He smiled faintly. "You won't pull the trigger. Not until you decide which legacy you're carrying." Behind him, movement. Klein. Scar glinting in the flashlight, pistol in his hand. His voice echoed in the vault. "She doesn't need to decide. I'll do it for her." Cypher moved, but Klein was faster. A shot rang, deafening in the enclosed space. Cypher staggered, blood blooming across his shoulder. He didn't fall, just leaned against the wall, still calm. Klein leveled his gun at me. "Give me the journal." I tightened my grip on my Glock. "Over my dead body. That can be arranged." Before I could fire, a voice boomed from outside. "Ochoa." "Drop it, Klein. Hands where I can see." Klein cursed, eyes darting. He fired a wild shot toward the doorway, forcing Ochoa back. Then he lunged for me. We hit the ground hard, journal skidding across the floor. His gun clattered away. We grappled, his scar inches from my face, his strength fueled by desperation. "Your father chose me," he hissed. "You were just the daughter. I was the real student." I slammed my elbow into his jaw, rolled free, and brought my Glock up. For a second, both of us froze, me aiming, him panting, blood on his teeth. Cypher's voice came from the corner, weak but steady. "This is the lesson, detective. Do you protect the law, or the bloodline?" My finger tightened on the trigger. Klein laughed through broken teeth. "He was mine, Vega. Mine. You'll never escape that." The vault filled with echoes, my heartbeat, Cypher's calm breathing, Ochoa shouting orders from the hall. The journal lay between us, pages open to my father's words. "A teacher's duty is to choose who deserves the key." And in that moment, I realized the choice was mine. My Glock was steady, but my hands weren't. Klein crouched across from me, sweat dripping off his scarred jaw, eyes burning with a mix of rage and triumph. The journal lay on the floor between us, my father's handwriting staring back at me like it was alive, waiting to see what I would do. Cypher bled against the vault wall, pale but eerily calm, like he was grading me in silence. Ochoa's voice echoed from the hallway, louder now, closer. "Vega, call it. We're ready to breach." But this wasn't about a breach. It wasn't about tactics or chain of command. This was about legacy, the one my father left and the one I was about to carve. Klein smirked through blood-stained teeth. "You won't shoot me. Not if you want the truth. Your old man picked me, Vega. Not you. I was the heir. You were the cover story." My chest tightened. For a split second, I saw my father's hand on my shoulder, Sunday mornings at Manny's, his voice teaching me how to read people, how to spot liars. Had he been grooming me? Or just shielding me from the rot he was passing to others? I steadied my breath. "No," I said. "He picked me when he told you no." That's why you're still trying to prove it. I squeezed the trigger. The shot cracked through the vault, slamming Klein back against the boxes. He slid down, stunned, clutching his shoulder, cursing. Alive, but done fighting. Cypher's chuckle was faint but sharp. Cops answer. Not daughters. I turned the barrel on him. He didn't flinch. And you, I said, voice breaking. You poisoned him. I released him, Cypher whispered. Your father begged me. You think he wanted you to see him wither? He wanted you to remember his strength, not his weakness. You expect me to thank you? No, Cypher said, eyes dimming. I expect you to understand. Boots thundered in the hall. Ochoa and 2 TAC officers burst in, weapons raised. They swept the room in seconds, dragging Klein to the floor, cuffing him as he spat threats. Cypher didn't resist when they pinned him either, blood soaking his sleeve. Ochoa shot me a look as he secured the journal in an evidence bag. You good? I nodded, but my voice betrayed me. Define good. Hours blurred after that. IA took Cypher into custody, medics patched him, lawyers circled like sharks. Klein screamed betrayal until his voice cracked, promising everyone would pay. Lupo was brought in from holding and confronted with the ledger pages. He went silent, then asked for a deal. But none of it mattered as much as what sat sealed in evidence. My father's journal. Chen put it on her desk like it was radioactive. This is going to tear the city in half, she said. Half will call him a dirty cop. Half will call him a hero who fought crime his own way. What do you call him, Vega? I didn't answer. Couldn't. Not yet. That night, I drove to the cemetery again. Rain slicked the grass, streaked the bronze plaque with my father's name. I sat there in the dark, journal copy in my lap, pages of his neat handwriting smudged from my fingers. One line repeated in my head, over and over, a teacher's duty is to choose who deserves the key. Was it me, Dad? I whispered. Or was it always them? The wind moved through the trees. No answer. Just silence. The next morning, the headlines exploded. Legendary Captain Daniel Vega's secret life exposed. News vans outside the precinct, anchors talking about betrayal, balance, corruption. Some called him a criminal mastermind. Others said he infiltrated crime to control it. The truth sat somewhere in the middle, and no one wanted to stay there. Chen called me in, her tone softer than usual. You understand what this means for you. I'm the daughter of a ghost, I said. You're also the detective who broke the program, she said. Cypher's facing conspiracy charges. Klein's looking at life. Lupo will rot before he ever sees daylight again. Whatever your father was, you ended it. I stared at the board. Photos of all 3 men lined up with red string slashed between them. And at the center, the Polaroid of my father, smiling outside Manny's, arm around Lupo, eyes that didn't look guilty, just tired. I didn't end it, I said quietly. I inherited it. Chen frowned. What do you mean? I didn't explain. Because the truth was heavy in my pocket. The brass key cipher had dropped during the struggle, stamped DV. I hadn't logged it. Not yet. That night, back in my apartment, I set the key on the table beside the copy of the journal. It gleamed under the lamp, daring me again. Somewhere out there was another lock, another box my father had left. Maybe with more answers. Maybe with more lies. I thought about Miles, sitting in holding, terrified. About Cypher, bleeding but still smiling like he knew I hadn't finished learning. About Klein, screaming that he was the real student. And about my father, whispering across time, some doors shouldn't open. But I also thought about what Cypher told me in the vault. Your father's last words were about you. I picked up the key, held it tight. Not as a cop. Not as a daughter. But as both. Lesson accepted, I whispered. The city outside kept moving, sirens wailing, locks clicking, lives crossing. And I realized the story wasn't ending. Not yet. Because the real question wasn't whether my father was saint or sinner. The real question was what I was going to do with the key he left me.